Blackened Cerebral Rifts is the third full length from Dead and Dripping. Now, this is a New Jersey based brutal death metal band from a fellow who is best known as the current drummer from Sentient Horror, which is another death metal band. And this is much more of a classic, or let's say early 2000s brutal death metal styled project. And solo project at that. And so this guy's, I guess if you're going to put together a solo brutal death metal project and you're going to have real drums on it, you better be a great drummer. And that's basically what he gets away with here as a great drummer. So that's kind of the big sell on this thing. This is definitely a brutal death metal record with technical death metal influences that touches upon the progressive side of death metal. That's not really where they started. They started as something a little bit closer to, their influences were like Devourment and Cerebral Effusion, which is more of a groove and a sort of brutal death metal feeling. And I sort of liken their evolution to something like Guttural Secrete, where we get a little bit more technical, but also their influences start to touch upon more classic shapes. And I guess I would mean the signatures of certainly the drum work of Cryptopsy. That's just kind of a given as you really look at the template and how it works. But also there are pieces that feel like they were heavily influenced by a certain era of Immolation and Morbid Angel as well. That's mostly true on the 2021 album. You definitely feel that like they're either tropes or there's arrangements that get us there on purpose. So what's changed on this record? Well, we'll cut into a song here, and you'll be able to tell pretty quickly what the reference is this time around. So I think because touching upon a demolic influence thing kind of changes your audience pretty quickly, that it's a pretty bold choice to put a demolic influence song as the second piece on the album. And this is despite the opening piece sounding quite a bit influenced by Morbid Angel in some respects. There's some reference, kind of old school referential pieces on this new record that feel fresh, and they feel a little bit more apt in terms of atmosphere, and it doesn't really change the fact that this is still a very brutal death metal album that is maybe less so than the last two. Now, we're continuing the conversation from Miasmic Eulogies predicting an eternal doctrine, but that doesn't mean that this isn't a very different thing, and the simpler grooves of this style feel like a step back in a lot of ways. I'd like to liken this band to like Wicked Innocence and Wormed, and because of its unique vocal style, it's the sort of demolic touch to some of it, the Immolation-esque sort of technicality to some of those grooves, but it doesn't quite get there as we move along in the track list and touch upon songs that are just a little bit not sloppy, but slower, less interesting. The riffs don't quite carry on through, and I found it like it's one of those records that starts out really strong, has this really interesting sound, but never fully goes anywhere with it. It never really, it does feel like a sea change overall, like I say in the review, where some of the slower pieces are more engaging, and obviously the artist is progressing in their skills in a lot of ways, but this feels like an in-between record. It feels like he's still figuring out how to make that idea interesting of slowing down and cutting to more impactful pieces. But it's such a maximal project, it's such a maximal sound that cutting back almost becomes a little bit boring to the keyed in brutal death metal mind. So that's not a bad thing. It's a little bit easier to jump into. I wouldn't say Incurso is worse than Noctambulant, for example, but it is different, and this is a bit different than what they've done before in an effective way, and I think that's it's worth checking out, seeing where this band is at right now, and obviously there's so much potential for where he could go from here. So it's a cool record. Check it out. It's out on Friday this week, and read the review if you feel like it.